stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. O'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming in the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you for that presentation, Honor Guard, and thank you also, Maddie McBannel, for that beautiful rendition of the national anthem. We would like to now share the history and importance of Veterans Day. Armistice Day marks the ending of World War I on November 11, 1918. With this, World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars. Unfortunately, this was short-lived, as World War II began shortly after in 1939. Later, in 1947, a World War II veteran organized the first National Veterans Day in Birmingham, Alabama, on November 11th, Armistice Day, to recognize veterans who have served our country. In years past, we've set this day aside in their honor. Veterans Day isn't just a celebration for the veterans, it's a celebration of the veterans. It helps us focus attention on the important purpose of Veterans Day, a celebration to honor America's veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. The importance of Veterans Day is unmeasurable. We can show gratitude and we can speak of our gratefulness, but we cannot put a price on the time, action, and lives that have been sacrificed for the American cause. Veterans Day is honoring, Veterans Day is remembering, Veterans Day is for them, and this is for them. This is an important day to reflect and honor all those who have served in our military, past, present, and future. Thank you, veterans. We would now like to welcome the band to play 5 songs, with which branch it represents. Veterans are invited to stand while their respective song is playing. Army, Air Force, Coast Guard. Marines. And Navy.
I would now like to welcome Pat McGinn to tell the history of Veterans Day.
Good afternoon. I'm really honored to be here today to say a few words on this Veterans Day. And what I'll be doing is reading some suggested remarks that were put together by the American Legion National Headquarters. November 11th, 1918 was a day of celebration throughout the free world. A conflict without precedents was ending. An armistice to stop the Great War was signed. Advances in the use of artillery, chemical weapons, and machine guns led to more than 9 million military deaths and an estimated 8 million civilian deaths during the war that devastated large parts of Europe as well as parts of the Middle East, Africa, and the Asia-Pacific region. World War I was so horrific that many referred to it as the war to end all wars. Unfortunately, that optimism was short-lived. A generation later, a second World War would follow, which was even deadlier than the first. Even so, the American Legion never wavered on the significance of the 1918 armistice. The nation's largest veterans organization had been advocating for Armistice Day to be observed as a national holiday since 1920. In the aftermath of World War II and the Korean War, the American Legion led an all-Veterans Day celebration in Emporia, Kansas, which was seen as the spark that lit the movement for November 11th, to be a day to honor every American who honorably served in our nation's military since the Revolutionary War. The advocacy paid off. On October 8, 1954, President Dwight Eisenhower signed a proclamation officially changing Armistice Day to Veterans Day. In his suggested talk for American Legion speakers, which was released to mark the first official Veterans Day observation 70 years ago, our organization spelled out its vision for the new national holiday. Quote, Veterans Day, like the Armistice Day of before, will ever remain a day of remembrance. Remembrance for those who have placed their love of God and country, their devotion to liberty and freedom, above even life itself. But also it should be a day of rejoicing. Rejoicing that American manhood and womanhood always have measured up to our responsibilities, unquote. While those responsibilities may have shifted and evolved with each subsequent generation, the love for this country is a common thread that binds veterans from the earliest days of our nation's founding to those serving today. One responsibility that all Americans should carry is the remembrance of those who have made our freedom possible. By virtue of your attendance here, you have shown an appreciation for veterans. The people here are veterans, friends of veterans, family of veterans, co-workers of veterans, and neighbors of veterans. It is up to us to ensure that every veteran believes that his or her service to this country is respected by their fellow Americans. There are many tangible ways that we can acknowledge your sacrifice, but the easiest is simply to say, thank you for your service to our country. Winston Churchill was speaking of the Royal Air Force's defense of Britain when he delivered his famous, "Never was so much owed by so many to so few" speech in 1940. The same could be said of American veterans in 2024. In 1980, about 18% of U.S. adults were veterans. Today it is approximately 5%. Active duty service members comprise less than 0.5% of the U.S. population. Yet when Hurricanes Helene and Milton wreaked havoc on the southeast coast of the United States, thousands of active duty, Reserve, and National Guard service members mobilized to provide life-saving release and recovery operations. An estimated 43,000 U.S. troops and dozens of warships are deployed in the Middle East. Marine Corps detachments provide security at U.S. embassies worldwide. Members of the Coast Guard perform an average of 42 search and rescue missions daily and facilitate the movement of $15.6 billion of goods and commodities through our maritime transportation system each day. All Americans benefit from the service of this small and distinguished group of volunteers who currently comprise the U.S. Armed Forces. Every year, America loses distinguished veterans who are eyewitnesses to events that shaped our world. Two notable veterans lost in 2024 were Lou Conter and Roger Donlin. One served in World War II, the other Vietnam. They each had very different definitions of heroism. Conter was the sole survivor of the attack of the USS Arizona when he passed away at age 102 on April 1st. People call us heroes, Conter said at the 75th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. We're not the heroes. The 1,177 who went down with the ship are the heroes. You have to remember, we got to go home, get married, have children and grandchildren, and we've lived a good life. Those who didn't get to do that should be called the heroes, unquote. Conter's humility was not uncommon among veterans who forever remember those who never made it home. But Donlin, who made it home from Vietnam, fits every definition one could have of a hero. Donlin was a captain of the Army 7th Special Forces Group when a Viet Cong battalion launched a pre-dawn attack on his camp in 1964. During the 5-hour battle, he endured multiple and severe wounds while valiantly fighting back and directing the camp's defense. He continuously exposed himself to great danger, administering first aid and saving the lives of his fellow soldiers. His action resulted in the successful defense of his camp and inspired not just his own soldiers, but Vietnamese allies. Donlin's bravery was recognized by President Lyndon B. Johnson, who presented him with the Medal of Honor for his actions. An online obituary posted this year quoted Donlin's definition of heroism. In my situation and every other situation that leads to the Medal of Honor, there is absolutely no input from the recipient. It's all done by observers. Heroism is a product of what other people see, unquote. Donald remained in the U.S. Army and retired as a colonel in 1988. We see and remember your heroism, Colonel Donald, along with that of so many other veterans. On this Veterans Day, we honor not an armistice, but the men and women who have served and continue to serve in the greatest military the world has ever known. Our message to America's veterans, past and present, is simple. We will never forget you. Thank you for being here, and God bless America.
Thank you, Pat McGinn. Your commitment, dedication, and sacrifice for our country is immeasurable, and we thank you for your service. I'd like to now welcome Captain Bell to tell his story of serving our country. Captain Bell.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. You're so polite, thank you. Before I introduce myself, I want to thank my fellow veterans who have joined us today. I'd also like to thank East Jordan Middle School and High School, especially Mr. Hamilton and the Shoe Club, for inviting me here to speak to you all. They came to our drill back in October at Camp Grayling, and we were able to show them kind of what we do on a typical drill weekend. And they were able to learn from us, and we were actually able to learn a lot from them. And what you have all accomplished over the years. So thank you, Mr. Hamilton and the Shoe Club. I really appreciate that. It's very impressive to say the least. Thank you for your positive impact you provide to your students and the community. So my name is Christian Bell. I'm a captain in the Michigan Army National Guard. I am from northern Michigan, from the other side of the state. I live in Presqu'île, north of Alpena. Grew up in Alpena. Married with my wife Laura, our 1-year-old daughter Abby, and our golden doodle, Lila. I refer to them all as my girls. They're the reason I put on the uniform. As mentioned, I am a captain of the Michigan Army National Guard. I'm here to represent the Michigan Army National Guard today. I am the commander of the 12th 25th Headquarters and Headquarters Company to the 12th 25th Combat Support and Sustainment Battalion. I've been in the National Guard for about roughly 9 years, coming up this March. Military service runs in my family. My great-great-grandfather, Thomas Hartley, served in the Canadian Expeditionary Forces during World War I. He actually enlisted at the age of 37. He had 3 children at home to go fight in France. His grandson, my grandfather, Richard Thomas Bell, was an immigrant, moved here from Canada, and was immediately drafted into the U.S. Navy in the late 50s, and he served 2 years on the USS Storms. According to my father, he was seasick constantly and lost a third of his way. So, but he survived and lived the American dream before he passed away in '97. Both my brother and I are captains in the military. He is currently stationed, my brother Josh is currently stationed at Fort Liberty, training to be within Special Forces, and he's a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. So I call him, you do secret squirrel stuff, and I just move things. So. I wanted to give you a brief overview of my military to show the nature of how my service is both home and abroad in the Michigan Army National Guard. I chose the National Guard to stay here in Michigan to serve my home state and my country as well. I've seen the world and been able to support my neighbors as well as those across the globe. So when I was in high school, we didn't have much money. My father sent me down and said, hey, I can't pay for college. I said, all right, I'll join the military. And I found out there were scholarships to become an officer in all the branches, so I applied to all of them. And my senior year, I had a full ride to the University of Michigan. Go Blue. So in September of 2013, I started my unofficial start as a cadet at the University of Michigan. I did a lot of things there that were awesome. I witnessed the horrific event of the drop punt in 2016. We don't talk about that. But it's okay. I sleep well at night knowing we won a national championship and Michigan State can't score a point in the playoffs. So, if anyone brings up Connor Stallions, he's a veteran too, so you can't make fun of him today. So, so I officially joined the National Guard in 2016. is when my career technically began. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in April of 2017 as a transportation officer. For the next few years, I drilled with my unit. We went to places like the Mojave Desert in California at the National Training Center. I trained Camp Atterbury, Indiana for chemical attacks. Did a bunch of loading C-130s with Humvees and other military equipment at Lansing. So just kind of all over doing things. Then 2020, COVID hit, and this is when I talk about serving your community. I was able to help support that in Lansing. I was the supply officer, and we were making sure all of our medics going all over the state had what they needed to be safe during the COVID pandemic. Later that year, I was deployed to Kosovo in support of KFOR, whose main mission is to provide safety in the relatively new nation of Kosovo. If you're asking where Kosovo is in the Balkans. I didn't know where Kosovo was until I got the call. He said, "Hey, Lieutenant Bell, at the time you're going to Kosovo." I go, "Where?" So, but it was a great experience nonetheless. To provide peace and security to a foreign country, their former country that doesn't recognize their existence, and to help boost the military along with our NATO allies. I even got to meet the president while I was there, which was pretty cool. So upon that deployment, I returned back to Michigan in 2021, and I've been with the 1225th ever since out of Detroit. Fun fact, the Tigers are named after them. So they actually asked us a long time ago if they could use Tigers as their mascot, and we let them. So it's kind of cool to be part of that legacy there. So today I want to talk to you about the sacrifice from the point of view of the veterans as I see it. As you know, Memorial Day is to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice and gave their life in service of the United States of America. Those men and women paid the ultimate sacrifice, one that we will never fully be able to repay them, but they were willing to give us for all of us here today. Veterans are those who have served, carrying the memories of those who came before us, both the fallen and previous generations of service members. We are not immune from sacrifices that can take a toll over time. From the moment we raise our right hands at a swearing-in ceremony until we receive our final orders and discharge papers, veterans make a commitment to this great nation of ours. Veterans write a blank check to the people of the United States of America and say, "Here am I, send me." For one reason or another, men and women have heard the call to serve. I can't give you all the reasons. Mine personally was love this country, sense of duty, and free college degree. Before we take that oath, before we raise our hands, before we swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, we have to be willing, at some conscious level or another, to be willing to make sacrifices for the betterment of our country. During our service, each sailor, Marine, soldier, airman, and Coast Guardsman have a vastly different experience depending on where they served, when they served, or how they served. They all have to make sacrifices at some level. Some veterans, when they joined, left home for the first time. Others didn't see their families for months or even years. Some deployed all over the world. I've seen families start and split. I've seen times of joy, times of heartbreak. Some veterans had to face the horrors of combat. I can't speak for them directly, but I can speak of all the little and big sacrifices that encompasses of veteran service. We cannot forget the families, too, who made the sacrifices alongside their loved ones from being away, having to deal with time away, constantly moving, last-minute missions, orders, emotional damage, countless other events. But this can take a toll on all of those involved. It's important during these times for both of those who have served and the families have a support system in place, get through the good times and the bad. I'm thankful for my family and my friends during my years of service thus far. To use this opportunity, I want to talk about veterans of foreign wars, especially those who have sacrificed the most, those who experience combat in one way or another. It is important that we document and listen to their stories, to remember the lessons of the past, and to move towards a better future. My experience with this was the reason I wanted to serve as the veteran that made the most impact on me was a Marine by the name of Jim Doherty. I'd like to share you his story for a bit, as that made a huge impact on my life. I met Jim. He was a family friend. He was a goofy, nice man. We had a party for my great uncle, and he was the only one wearing the party hat, and you would never have known he was a Marine. You never know what about his service. Later I found out he was a Marine who fought in Vietnam on the front lines. And he told this story. Two things pop out of him I want to share. When he served When he first got to Vietnam, his lieutenant put him in 2nd Squad. And then a few minutes later, he said, Jim, go to 3rd Squad. So he moved over. A few days later, the entire 2nd Squad was wiped out. Many years later, he actually ran back into the lieutenant at a reunion for Vietnam veterans. Jim asked him if he remembered that day, and the lieutenant did. He asked why, and he said, I never did that before and never done it since, but I had no idea why. During his time there, Jim lost all 3 of his best friends, Fran, Cal, and Jeff. Jim survived the war, but the war never left him. For years, he haunted him. He worked in the Detroit SWAT team. The flashbang grenades kind of brought back those horrific stories. Thankfully, his daughter, who started going to church with a friend, brought him to church, and he was eventually able to overcome those demons because of that. Sometime later, about 20 years from the war, his same daughter answered the phone and said, hey Dad, it's Jeff. Jim couldn't believe it. Jeff did die in Vietnam, but was revived on the helicopter, and no one told the unit. Jim had lived for over 20 years thinking that one of his best friends was dead, and was able to reconnect with him. Because of those experiences, Jim was able to pray for the strength to share his story over and over to keep the memory of his friends alive. I think of Jim often, and the sacrifices he made for those of Fran and Cal. For many years, he told these stories at events, churches, and Veterans Day events, until the stories got too much for him and he had to stop. But thankfully, one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life was to record it. Put a story, he spoke at a high school leadership at a camp near Lake Ann, and I put it on YouTube. I was in high school, college at the time. It's probably the coolest thing I've ever done to preserve his story. And I plan on showing my daughter when she is old enough. And I mentioned Jim's story out of many to keep the stories alive, to keep the veterans, what they represent, alive from all the wars. And I'll leave you today with these final thoughts. Once a service member has done their duty, whether during war or during peace, they deserve the title of veteran. The sacrifices I mentioned have left some sort of scars in one way or another. Some scars may be physical, loss of limb, some sort of cuts, bruises, health issues, etc. Some scars may be mental, PTSD, the bad experiences. These scars come in many shapes and forms. Many veterans of today have mixed feelings about how recent wars and conflicts ended. As the world gets murky sometimes, it's easy for those who serve to ask this question: was it worth it? Was my service worth it? In August of 2020, the United States left Afghanistan, in which some people may consider disastrous, others, it all depends on who you ask. My brother served in Afghanistan. He was there 8 months prior to that pullout. When I asked him about it, he didn't say much, and I don't blame him. I could tell he just wasn't happy about it, being over there. I wasn't happy about it either, but him being there, being a veteran of that war, he was very silent on the matter, other than a few words. As it's similar to the wars of Vietnam and other conflicts that are sometimes go unheard of. Was it worth it? Was all that blood and sweat worth it? To my fellow veterans, I will answer the question for them: yes, your service was worth it. Despite all that happened, no matter the outcome of those conflicts, no matter what has happened, the service was worth it because of what it represents. For those of you who have gone before us, we honor that service to make sure that those members do not die out, and that we continue to recognize your sacrifices. To all of you, I give you the simple task I got from all these feelings and memories around this holiday and this time of year. Remember us. Remember all of our sacrifices to give you a chance of a better future. Remember those who have passed on. Remember our friends, of the ones who have never made it home. Remember everything we have sacrificed, big or small, to make this country what it is today. Today isn't the only day we can say thank you to our veterans. You can do that every day. I encourage you to do so. But this is just a small way of making sure the entire nation takes a moment to reflect on all our veterans have done for this great nation of ours. In the book turned miniseries, Band of Brothers, there's a quote in the last episode I felt was appropriate for today. Major Dick Winters recalls a conversation he had with his grandson. He said, and I quote, "One day my grandson said to me, 'Grandpa, were you a hero in the war?' I said to him, 'No, I'm not a hero, but I have served in a company full of them.' I never fought in an actual war, went overseas, but never fought in a conflicts and did not consider myself a hero. Everyone who has served makes up this veteran community. They are the heroes. And I say to you, remember them. Remember us. God bless our veterans and those currently serving. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
Thank you both, Pat McGinn and Captain Bell, for sharing your stories with us today. Very inspiring. The veterans have sacrificed their time, and some even their lives, to make our country safe. Many veterans consider it an honor to have served our country. It is our honor to serve them today. Last year, the Shoe Club partnered with the American Legion to help raise funds to enhance Gar Veterans Park. We showed you a video last year explaining the project and what we hope to accomplish. I am proud to say we accomplished our goals and the park is complete. Please enjoy this video made by Aubrey Dunson in the video production class highlighting the project in the park.
This is your Grand Army of the Republic. Civil War veterans banding together for the benefit of all. With posts around the country and towns just like yours. Over 400,000 strong. Supporting our boys and lending a helping hand to those in need. They've succeeded during the war and after. Securing pensions, housing, voting rights for black veterans, and creating Memorial Day as a national remembrance of all we've lost as well as what we won. These United States. This indeed is your Grand Army of the Republic.
Nestled in the heart of East Jordan, Michigan lies a small park with a big story. Gar Park, a tribute to the brave veterans of the past and a cornerstone of community history.
It all began in the early 20th century with a man named Douglas Charles Loveday, an English immigrant who came to East Jordan in 1883. Loveday was a visionary. He saw the potential in this growing town and set out to shape its future.
Loveday established businesses, built the town's first brick buildings, created the Power and Light Company, and even created the Loveday Opera House, a hub of entertainment and culture in the early 1900s. One of Loveday's most enduring contributions came in the early 1900s, when he donated land to the city for a park dedicated to the Grand Army of the Republic, Civil War veterans who had formed a strong presence in the community here. Over the years, Gar Park has grown to honor not just Civil War veterans, but all soldiers who have served. It is a place of remembrance, reflection, and community spirit.
Today, thanks to the efforts of the American Legion Post 227, the Shoe Club, and the countless community members, Gar Park has undergone a transformation, a project called the Honor and Service Project, to enhance its beauty and add new features, and continue its legacy as a cornerstone of East Jordan's history.
With new additions like a veteran star, pavilion, and updated landscaping, the park's evolution symbolizes the enduring honor and service of those who call East Jordan home.
Gar Park is more than a piece of land. It's a living testament to the courage and dedication of the men and women who have shaped our community and our country.
Thank you to all veterans for coming to this year's